Hey, Victor, how you doing? It's Charles and Gerald.
Good. How are you?
Good. Gerald didn't have the ability to call you, so he asked me if I would call you through Skype and connect you two together. So.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Pleased to meet you, Vic. Charlie had mentioned that you wanted to talk to Frank and I.
Well, I was curious to meet up with you. Whereabouts are you in Ontario? Where are you?
I'm in Alberta.
Oh, you're all Alberta. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you're in Ontario. Where the heck you were?
And Frank is in Australia, and I can never remember which city he's in. I think it's Sydney. I always say it's Melbourne, but I think it's Sydney he's in. Yeah. Anyway,
somewhere on the globe.
Same time zone anyway, down under.
Right. So you're involved in that One Heaven thing, right?
Well, yes, quite a few people involved in it. Frank and I, originally our conversations were about ancient history, and he'd been working on this Euclidean model for a long time in his life, and anyway, we got into discussing various elements, and actually the point he'd studied a lot of very ancient law and a lot of religious law, and I had studied stuff that was more contemporary, and when we were first discussing legal things, he was still he didn't really know about the straw man type of stuff, eh? And anyway, he's got an unbelievable learning curve, and he is right up to speed on the way the law things works. And because of his his study of ecclesiastical law, as well as other ancient law, that the things dovetail together, eh? It's kind of like, you're studying one thing, Charlie's studying another, and I'm studying another. When we start talking together, we start putting together a bigger picture, eh? Charlie?
Yep.
Yeah. Frank is calling me right now. Would you add him to your conversation?
Will do.
Okay.
Continue talking.
Yes. And the insights of how the system works have been coming in at an unbelievable pace in the last 3 weeks or so.
Yeah, I think that's going to grow exponentially as more of us wake up and start asking questions. The answers coming.
Well, yes. Like you had dug into the birth certificate aspect. I sure have. There's about five more different things to the birth certificate that we've discovered. You see, the whole thing is about jurisdiction, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And so, in order to counter some jurisdiction over top of us, we have to figure out who's got the jurisdiction and how they got it, right?
Correct.
And so there's a bunch of different levels to this, and you know how law works. They start with one act or law, and then it evolves into another one and another one and another one. Yeah. And so there's a progression. Frank, Victor Beck from Canada wanted to talk to us, and Charlie has patched us together on a phone call. Vic is on the line in Ontario.
Very cool, Frank.
And I was just explaining, things about jurisdiction, and that, in the last 3 weeks or so, a lot more insights have been coming in as to how the system gets their jurisdiction over us and how it works.
Yes.
And some of it we haven't got into discussing with the whole group because it's really quite new. But in any event, the system has jurisdiction over us, and they do have a lineage of jurisdiction going back a long time. So they do have jurisdiction. We have to zero in on it, and we have to counter it. So that's what we're trying to do with a few different documents right now. And Frank is working on some the canon law of One Heaven, which is a very important part of it. And the other thing that is come to the top of our pile recently, Vic, do you remember what color summonses used to be?
Nope, but they're yellow right now.
They're yellow, eh? Interesting. Well, they always used to be blue, and the Sunday laws were called blue laws. And anyway, blue is an ecclesiastical color, and that's why you see blue on all the police forces and whatever. Very interesting to note that they're coming on yellow paper now, and that's another color that we would expect. But maybe Frank, you could explain to Vic a little bit more of what we're doing, or maybe you have some direct question you wanted to ask Vic. Might be better.
Yeah, I mean, Vic, well, do you want an update from what Gerald's saying first, or do you want to get straight into questions you've got or comments? How'd you like to go?
Are you talking to me, Vic?
Yeah, do you want me to give some background as to adding to what Gerald said, or do you want to get straight into some questions? What would suit you?
Maybe, yeah, sure. Maybe get into a little bit more where he's coming from. I did read your quite a bit of your website, although there's a lot more to go.
The most difficult thing to anybody that comes to it, first off, more so if they're less floor-read, slightly less so if they're more well-read, and that is that the exact underlying motive for these things is extremely difficult. And there's a reason for that. There's two reasons for that. One is one of the things I used to have as a kid was I was fascinated in war and strategy. And I realized as I got older that it held me in good stead. And one of the lessons I learned about any kind of war, and we are, as you know, Vic, well and truly in a war and have been for a long time, a spiritual war, a war of morals, a war of, and then ultimately a physical flesh war. Between those that wish to keep us as slaves and the few that wish to change that. And that is that whenever you fight something and you make it a cohesive opposite to yourself, the more that you attack it, the more that you ultimately potentially strengthen it. I mean, this is the fallacy of anyone that's attempted in history to cause a genocide or some kind of elimination, is that from what I've read, almost no attempt of that has ever succeeded. If anything, it has been the catalyst for a much stronger opposition. The only strategy that seemed to have worked, and worked an absolute treat in wiping things from the face of the earth, is consumption. That is, outpositioning and consuming the enemy by establishing position where rather than opposing them, you honour them and then consume them as a sub-branch of a greater thing. Yeah?
Yes.
Now that's the only strategy that I have seen in war or society or any form of battle of ideas that has ever worked. And it is the hallmark of the Jesuits and the hallmark of the Roman cult. And certainly in the last 300 years, they've been exceptionally successful, even with quite poorly executed and poorly devised strategies. They've been extremely, extremely successful. So that's the heart and purpose of what we're doing here. It is a consumption and a correction, as opposed to a traditional, good versus evil, team one versus team two type thing. But now we're at a point where we've realized that the heart of the system that supports, protects, nurtures the bar societies around the world that have locked the courts into their own members is canon law. In fact, I said to Gerald, when you hear the word rule of law, and I'm sure we talk about rule of law all the time, what we unwittingly do when we say rule of law, rule, measure, bar, are all different words for canon. A canon is an ancient measure, an ancient rule, an ancient bar, yeah? An ancient reed.
Yes.
an ancient measure of a carpenter. So what they've done is that they've effectively monopolized the courts because they've monopolized the law. Canon law, rule of law, is their most precious and strongest claim of jurisdiction, because it's through those 1,400, 1,500 canons that they establish their claim of superior jurisdiction over all of us. And until we, and we can't, and this is the thing, I've been looking up until now on how to abrogate that. There is no way to abrogate canon law other than to consume their system and demonstrate its deficiency and establish through canon law and effectively abrogate that, what they've done then, to simply false claims. Now, I've sent to Charlie and I've sent to Gerald, and if I've got your email, I'll send you an update of how this is going. It's going extremely well. And we're in a position by next week to publish something in the order of about 6,000 canons, which finally and forever will eliminate the position of the Roman cult, the Moloch worshipping Talmud rabbi, the Venetian noble classes, the Knights of Malta, European nobility, from their perches of being the controllers of us allegedly being slaves. All right, we're very close. And with that, and I think a remarkable thing is, I think, going to take place. We've learned a huge amount in terms of, in a very short time, in terms of how their system controls standing, how they hide the overwhelming ecclesiastical nature of their courts. But now, what we find and what I found is the entire court system, every member is dedicated towards honouring rule of law, canon law. So,
I'll vote for that.
Yeah. So what we're going to be able to do, in fact, Charlie has just sent me your email, so I'm going to send you these. So when we present canon law to them, for the first time ever, we are going to be able to say to the Bar Society, honour your code, honour your pledge, honour your oath, and obey canon law. Here are the canon laws that you are disobeying. Now that is going to shock them to their bone, because they have absolutely no response. It is their weakest flank. It is absolutely the weakest flank. Once we establish canon law as it should be, we actually finally and forever destroy their jurisdictional claims. Right. But until we do that, their jurisdictional claims are watertight and are virtually impossible to penetrate.
One of the things that we've been working on is a thing called a notice of correction of record, and some of the insights that I've gotten lately have been assisted or given directly by a fellow in England that I've been talking to, and just today he pointed me to a couple of things that are up on UK legal websites where it says, for instance, that if a man or woman stands in front of a judge and proves that they're a living flesh, he has to offer them remedy. Have you ever heard of the Sestakv Act from 1666?
Can't say I have.
Yeah. Well, what it did was declare everyone dead if they haven't been heard from in 7 years. So from the birth certificate up to 7 years, if they haven't heard from you, they consider you dead, and they handle you as a trust from that point on. So when you tell the judge where you tell them in the system that you're alive, now they have to start dealing with you from a different angle. But this is just one small aspect of what needs to be covered in letting them know the jig is up. Eh?
Another thing we found was that you know when judges run off to their chambers, there's been a bit of a feeling for a while that somehow denotes that you're on victory. We discovered actually that when a judge first enters a chamber, he really is representing himself, and really all the laws of the society we think are by the Parliament, but really they're all bylaws of the Bar Society. So in that first instance, when you establish your standing, unless the judge provides remedy, he is in dishonour. Yeah.
Yep.
So if a judge doesn't want to provide remedy, what he can do is he can leave the court, which is what we see when they run out. But when he returns, he doesn't return to a form of court based on the rules of the Bar Society. He returns now, changing the form of the court without us seeing anything physically change, into full Admiralty Court. Now, unless you then re-establish your standing again, then it's as if you no longer have any standing, because it's a brand new court. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yep. Gotcha.
Now, it also that what you ask for has to change as well, because if you ask for the wrong thing, they won't give it to you. So under the Bar Society, in the first form, it's remedy. But under the second form, because it's gone to pure Admiralty, you really have only two choices. If you don't establish standing, they will treat you as salvage under the laws of Oleron, which is the base laws, and they're all fictional, but under the claimed laws that the Roman cult and the Venetians use for commerce. So that salvage, you're dead, right? You're just a four-poster bed. If you re-establish your standing, which you must do when the judge returns, what you ask for is cure and maintenance, not remedy, because cure and maintenance is the form of remedy. Under Admiralty law, the laws of Oleron is the base for it all. So it's always good to get back to the source document. And under that, what it says is salvage is salvage. Okay, there is no life salvage in maritime law. So if you're dead, you're going to be salvaged and basically put into some holding building, right? That's why they'll put you in prison. You're just a bit of cargo going to a warehouse. Yeah. But if you establish yourself as living, then under the laws of Oleron, that means you're a sailor, okay, on a ship of state, and they must provide you cure. It's actually not just cure, but maximum cure and maintenance until your health is restored. So it actually is a stronger remedy than if the judge had never run out and returned. But what the judge is trying to do is basically re-establish superior jurisdiction by tricking the defendant into not re-establishing their standing. Yes?
Yep.
And sadly, I feel that this happens, I think, almost 90% of the time, that a man or woman learns the art of establishing their standing. Judges get wind of it. They're more often than not running from the chamber. The truth movement are told that is a good sign. So it's actually being misinterpreted.
Right.
But when they come back, what they're doing is they've re-established their honour. It's a totally different court.
Oh, yeah.
It's now purely Admiralty court. And unless you re-establish standing and ask for the correct remedy for Admiralty law, they will not give it to you. And they can do it once more, Vic.
Yep.
If you're in a federal court, they can leave again for the third and final time. And if they leave again and they return, they come back as a high priest of the religion of Baal and under the protection of the ecclesiastical laws of canon law, where they are treated as an ordinary. So they're basically sitting there as a representative of the Curia. It's as if you're in front of the Pope. Yeah?
Right.
Now, this is rarely done because a mistake at this level is a very serious error on their part, and they could, if they do an error of dishonour at this third level, they lose being a judge forever. Yeah?
Is that right?
But it's the last it's the last chance for them to basically get one over you. And it's only at that point that the claim of sovereignty of a living flesh being between oneself and God can be used. At no other point does it have any remedy. So really what's happened with sovereignty is, I believe sovereignty is, because of that, is a genuine remedy, but only in the very, very rarest occurrences.
Right.
But other than that, it's turned out to be a terrible, terrible distraction for people.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And people believe that when a judge runs out of the courtroom, they think it's funny.
And I think that is part of the misinformation that has been presented, sadly, because the people think of it in terms of battle. Really, what they're watching is a judge leaving to re-establish their honour because they don't wish to offer remedy, returning into a brand new court. Well, understanding what they're doing exactly, and in fact, I'll tell you where we found validation for this. The word bar in bar association has been deliberately, firstly it comes from 1823, so it's relatively recent, but its history has been clouded from a name that is supposed to have been a wash-up of the temple bar and tradition. It actually turns out to be one of the most powerful magic words available to these magicians that curse. I mean, when they sentence you, they're issuing a curse. They're issuing a spell. Yeah? What we've failed to realize is that we're dealing with people who, for a living, perform magic. And we've forgotten that everything about them is about staying in honour with their magic. If they lose their power of magic, they can't issue orders. That's why if they're in dishonour, a judge has to step down because their orders have no magical power under their system. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's actually the reason. And the proof is in the name of these societies. The word bar is a magic word in that what you see is one word, but really what you should be seeing is bar, bar 3 times. That's what the word actually means. Bar, 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 bar. That's what bar is. And bar, bar means father in Hebrew, and it means priest in Hebrew.
That's interesting.
And it particularly means a Baal priest. A Baal priest.
That's what it means, a Baal priest. Now,
a Baal or Baal?
Well, Baal. Baal is 2 words. Bar, which is Lord, and then El. And the L is abbreviated. So Baal with the apostrophe means Lord God. Yeah?
Right.
So Bar, just on its own, means Lord. So what you have is the word Bar also means son of, as you've probably seen in Hebrew, like Simon Bar Jonah, Simon, son of Jonah. Yeah? But it also means practitioner of. So what you have is Bar Bar, practitioner of Bar. Bar Bar, practitioner of, abbreviated B-A-R. B, Baal, A, by, R, Romanum. So practitioner of Baal through Rome. Yeah? Bar, another word for canon, rule, standard. Okay? Practitioner of Bar, practitioner of canon law. Yeah?
Yes.
They tell you.
Yeah, one other use of bar is the beginning of barbarians, which comes from the Greek, and it means that the people spoke in the manner that they spoke. It was not understandable, just like legalese. So that's where the word barbarian came from. And, of course, it's part of bar, where they speak legalese, where only they can understand the words and we can't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
So what we see in the word itself is a supremely powerful magic word that they are using to present themselves. And so they're really telling people that they are religious. The canon law tells that all courts are considered temples. That's what canon law is doing, is giving validation to the fact that the courts are called oratories, and it's in canon law, and priests, judges are priests called ordinaries. But what this is doing is validating what we're witnessing, that the judge leaving and returning is really changing the form of the court to more senior, more powerful law. It's showing that a judge is holding levels of power. It's showing that a judge is absolutely dripping in being a priest, a Baal priest, and that the authority of the judge and the ability to sentence is purely an ecclesiastical and sacramental power. It has nothing to do with adjudication or agreement. Their ability to judge and sentence is purely by remaining in honour of their ecclesiastical powers. So when you present an ecclesiastical notice of dishonour that gives notice of dishonour by their rules, a judge loses their power. And it turns out that all this argument about liens and things that people have had for years, that, if you get a lien on a judge, the judge has to leave. The lien means nothing. The lien is irrelevant. What's happening is when someone perfects that notice of protest and dishonour to the point that it has some ecclesiastical power, the judge is screwed. Their power, it turns out, is magic. Their power is, if I can't curse you, then I can't do my job. And that's what a judge is supposed to do, is to issue judgments, and their judgments are curses. The curse establishes a debt. The debt is the monetization. That's what they do. Have you ever heard the story in the New Testament about Jesus removing 100 demons and then putting them into pigs and they jump off a cliff?
That's not in my Bible.
Okay, well, there's a story that, and it might only be in the Vulgate, the Roman cult's Vulgate, but it's a story of Jesus banishing 100 demons from a fellow and then putting them into the pigs, and the pigs jump off the cliff. But the point of the story is it demonstrates the rebound of magic in terms of curses. So what it's implying is that Jesus cursed the demons. The demons then left the body, and then Jesus got the demons into the pigs so that effectively the rebound wouldn't occur. There's actually a quote, "Judge not lest ye be judged." Yes?
Yep.
That should actually be, "Curse not lest ye be cursed." Okay? The Egyptians knew, and these people are magicians. Remember, they're sorcerers. They're into magic. The Egyptians knew that the most powerful spell is a curse spell. But the downside of a curse spell is when it matures, it returns with interest. Yeah?
Right.
So what they did was that they formed... Have you seen the mummification of animals?
Yep.
Now, we've totally misunderstood why they went to the extent of mummifying animals. But what the Egyptians worked out is they could protect a king from the afterlife of anyone putting curses by basically putting in substitutes and blessing those substitutes so that any curses would go to the substitute. It's a bit like, modern fighter planes will let off flares.
Yes.
The missile will think the flare is the plane, right? We'll think the missile is the curse coming back, right?
Yep.
If you don't have a flare, what's going to happen to the plane?
It's going to get nailed.
That's right. Well, that's exactly what happens with curses, right? Now, in voodoo, the voodoo priests put bugs and little animals, depending upon the seriousness of the curse, in jars. Have you ever seen I don't know if you've ever seen a documentary, but you ever see a voodoo priest's got prayer room, it's full of jars, right? And what they do is when they curse, they'll put the rebound of the curse what they'll do is they'll as they're doing the curse, they'll have the animal and the jar, and when they're finished, they'll put the jar away, so the jar becomes responsible, not the priest. Yeah?
Right. Interesting.
Now, the Roman cult with the Venetians under Medici came up with a different plan. They used money, debt, right?
Yes.
So money became the currency of curses, right?
Yes.
It meant that all the curses that they've done will never mature so long as the money system continues to exist, right?
Right.
And so long as the debt's never matured, they don't get in trouble.
No doubt this is, they've had the experience of doing this for a extremely long time in terms of time.
Well, the bastards have been getting away with it for 2,000 years, eh? But figuring out how exactly that they pull off their jurisdiction and get everybody to swallow it. It's just like money. Money only has a value if everybody believes it's valuable. If the whole world would only accept seashells as currency, then the currency would be seashells, right?
Yeah,
you know?
that's right.
Somebody tried to give me a piece of paper and say, "You nuts, I want seashells," you know? Nothing else is valuable. So it doesn't matter if it's gold. Gold is still an illusion. And of course, you heard about what the IMF did to the Reserve Bank of India about a year ago?
Nope.
They sold them 200 tons of tungsten with 4 microns of gold plating on it for full price. Now, if you read the incorporation documents of the IMF, you will find that they can't be sued by anybody or anything on the planet. So what recourse does the bank have? They got to fill up their drill holes and tell everybody it's gold.
Bunch of cheats, eh?
Well, it's like you said about the Monopoly game. You know, they own the board, they own all the pieces, they own the bank, and they make the rules, and they change the rules, and on top of it all, they cheat.
These are rules for us, not for you, not for us.
Hey, Vic.
Yes.
One of the things that Frank was going to before he left was that when these judges come into court, because of that money being a curse, these judges will not come into the chambers with any money in their possession while they're there on the job.
Is that right?
Yeah.
They'd be coming in with their own curse, I guess, eh?
It's coming back to them.
Right.
Yeah, the other one on that, Vic, is if you read Catholic canon law, all the priests take a vow of poverty, eh?
Yes.
Okay, how come the cardinals are all billionaires? That doesn't
I've
sound
always
very...
wondered that.
You've always wondered that? They never touch the money. If you don't have any money in your pocket, you must be poor, right? That's their trick on the vow of poverty. They never touch it. It's never in their pocket, so therefore they're poor.
Yeah, I knew that they were doing for the money. They're not real, the real religious guys, but I had no idea of the money being a curse from their perspective in that sense. It is a curse in anybody's hand for that matter.
Yeah, actually how that got developed was really understanding how bills of exchange work. They're really quite incredible.
Another thing, Vic, we found is that every time they establish a new covenant, when it is in honor and adding to the original Talmud covenant, they burn and murder by fire a lot of people.
What's the purpose of that? Part of the curse process?
To worship Moloch, from where we get the word immolate.
Right.
On the Holocaust, the burnt offering of animals. So you discover all these periods in history where these events occur, and around that event, and because of that event, there is some major act that takes place.
Yes.
So, for example, when the Siesta KV Act was introduced, which introduced the legal concept of how the trust was to work.
Yes.
And we call it the estate, the concept of estate.
Yep.
The concept of estate is that the man or woman is effectively dead, legally. You can't have a living thing in a trust. It has to be dead. It's probate, right?
Yeah, the corpus, yep.
Yep.
So what the registrar at Vital Statistics does is, as soon as he does the birth certificate, he declares the baby dead.
Unless that's why it's a notice of protest in blue. That's why birth certificates are in blue, because it's saying, and it's also why the birth certificate is usually not issued immediately with the live birth record. It's issued sometime after, because what they're doing is saying, we haven't heard from the baby, so we're writing a notice of protest and dishonour. And after 7 years, the registrar can then say, well, I didn't hear from the baby. After 7 years, the baby must be dead. That means any Cesta KV trust is lawful, and the lien is placed on the Cesta KV trust is lawful. And then any money that is created from the maritime lien, which is then approved, monetised maritime bills of exchange, can be issued.
Right.
And unlike agricultural bills of exchange, which we call commercial, a maritime bill of exchange, because the lien makes the acceptor already accept the lien, once it's monetised, the ecclesiastical nature of a maritime lien means that the bills of exchange cannot be refused. It is actually a dishonour and a criminal act to refuse a maritime bill of exchange under their system.
Well,
and now we know them as US Federal Reserve notes.
yes.
They're more powerful than gold. See, gold, people can haggle, but you can't haggle maritime bills of exchange. You have to accept them on face value.
Right.
So the reason they got rid of the gold standard was maritime bills of exchange are far better and far more useful than gold.
Right.
They're guaranteed by the lien.
Yes.
It's wild, isn't it?
And who's holding the lien?
The trustee of the bankruptcy. So every country was bankrupted in 1933 by the BIS. The BIS was founded with $1.6 trillion worth of gold.
Yeah.
It's actually listed in plain sight. They tell everyone that it was founded with $1.6 trillion worth of gold. They just say it was Swiss gold francs. Now, the Swiss have never minted $1.6 trillion worth of Swiss gold francs ever, right? What they're saying is that the total stores of gold of the Vatican, which is the largest private stores in the world, underwrote the BIS. Yeah?
Yep.
And what they're not telling you is they say that this gold came together from Germany, England, and other places. Well, these countries have never had that volume of gold, and they never disclosed that they own that gold. It's the Vatican, but it was brought into play through a large group of private shareholders.
Yes.
That have a direct tie into the Vatican and remain the shareholders of the BIS today.
That part I was aware of.
Were you aware of that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know who the parties are, but the $1.5 trillion and.
Well, the reserve banks are only members, but the private shareholders actually they hide them in plain sight. You know who they are? They're the Knights of Malta.
Okay.
So the Knights of Malta is an order of the Catholic Church. It's the most open order of the Catholic Church because it permits Protestants and Jews. Not that I've seen any Muslims in it, but I'm sure they'd even accept Muslims, right? Okay? Yep. And any head of state that comes on board becomes a Knight of Malta. Every FBI director has been a Knight of Malta. Every CIA director has been a Knight of Malta. Every treasurer has always been a Knight of Malta. Every president since Roosevelt has been a Knight of Malta. But it's all valid. You can all validate it. It's like it's nothing in there that is untrue or trying to establish a position that can't be validated. It's all fact. But it was just trying to establish that there was a solid underpinning to it. But the gold was a ruse. The gold just got everyone into a position of bankruptcy control. And then what the biz did was put these reserve banks in place as the trustees. So the liens are held by the trustees. So the Federal Reserve is the trustee of the multiple timed bankrupted corporations of the United States. Now, every time there's a bankruptcy, what they do is they roll the previous bankrupted corporation under a new, fresh company, a new, fresh corporation. Right. So think of it as onions, yeah?
Yep.
So every time they do that, it makes it harder to get out of bankruptcy, right? Because if you're under multiple bankruptcies, you have to clear the first and the second and the third, right? It's like digging a deeper hole.
Yes.
So in the case of America now, it's been bankrupted at least 5 times, I think, 4 or 5 times. So that means that we are buried 5 times into that corporation, yeah?
Yes.
And every time what they're doing is it's just another giant curse, massive curse. All still managed by the trustees being the Fed Reserve. Back to the biz. But what we've found is, too, that of all the maritime bills of exchange currencies, only one is given ecclesiastical superiority. And by ecclesiastical superiority, I mean a form of money that is still produced in a religious ceremony. Right?
Yes.
Now, you heard from us that blue is the colour of the ecclesiastical notices of dishonour, right? It's also a colour that denotes the sea of souls, aqua, in fact, the colour.
Yes.
The spiritual force. Now, when they print US dollars, the paper they print it off is blue. It starts off as blue, right? And then when they apply yellow to it, it becomes green. It becomes the yellow is the symbol of the Venetians. The aqua is the symbol of the sea. And when the yellow and the aqua are applied, you're talking about maritime, the colour, and it's really cool. It's called aquamarine. Yeah.
Yes.
And then the red, the symbol of the red is back to the Talmud covenant. The symbol of red, because it's the blood covenant. There's only ever been one blood covenant. We think it's, in Christianity, the sacrifice of Jesus. But the Talmud has always known that is just them putting that up as a false signal. The covenant that they base it on is the covenant of the chosen people. You've heard that before, chosen people?
Yes. Yep.
Well, it's the chosen people of Moloch, right? The chosen people of Satan, not the chosen people of divine, right?
Well, a lot of Christians out there have a different take on that.
Well, but this is the problem. The rabbi know this. So, they've sold the lies and they laugh. That's why they laugh, because people are sold a lie and believe it. But the red symbolizes the Talmud covenant. So whenever you see the numbers in red, it's back to the primary covenant. Yeah?
By the way, if I could just interject there, Vic, do you know about the United States Public Law 102-14?
Not off the cuff. I read a lot of them, but quite a while ago.
Okay, that one is entitled the Education Act. It was passed in 1991 by the Bush.
Okay.
Anyway, it declares that all U.S. law is based on the Talmud. Is that news to you?
No, it's not actually.
Ah. Anyway, it goes on to say that it's an education that the Talmudic, or the Noahide laws, the 7 Noahide laws, are to be applied to Gentiles in the United States. Right. It doesn't explain what the punishment is for violating the Noahide laws, but it makes a statement. You can find it on the internet, 102-14. Anyway, so what it's doing is it's getting back to the Talmudic jurisdiction, right, with the original blood oath, and that's where the first covenant. That's where the first covenant is at, and they do have jurisdiction. They do.
Right. Yeah, my dad always said the Talmud's not a good book for us.
No, but the interesting thing, and this is something I was saying to Gerald, and I've said to the guys, Vic, is that when you hear the word covenant, what they don't tell you is that covenant is a binding agreement. So it's a contract. It's a binding contract.
Yep.
And you cannot enter a contract. Under the oldest laws, so go back to Hammurabi, Rome, all these laws, you cannot enter a contract unless it's a contract of equals, right?
Yes.
So what they teach Christians is that they say that there's a sacred contract, right? But they don't teach Christians that you can't enter a contract unless you're equal. So, right. So when a covenant is claimed and it cannot be demonstrated as equal, then it can't be a valid covenant. It's a false covenant, right? It's a false binding agreement. Now, the most famous passage of the Talmud, and you've probably heard this, is when the rabbi argued with God and won. Have you ever heard of that argument?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, you probably might have heard of it, but maybe not the quote. But there's a famous passage by the founder of the Kingdom of Israel and founder of the covenant, under one of his various pseudonyms, where it says that the rabbi argued with God. In this case, it's with Moloch, Satan, and won the argument. So the passage is probably one of the most esoteric of the Talmud. It's regarded as one of the most important of the Talmud, but its reason for existence is the argument is one of jurisdiction, and why they claim that the covenant with Moloch is valid is that under this argument, the rabbi argued that if they demonstrate such evil upon the earth, well, he didn't publish this, but this is the effect of it. If they unleash such evil upon the earth and establish rule upon the earth as judges of the earth, then they are equal to Moloch in the underworld.
Right. Gotcha.
So it's a valid covenant in their eye, so long as they continue to perform evil and sacrifice. Right?
Okay, so that explains a lot right there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But there was a maturing agreement in the covenant, which was at the end of the covenant, or at an appointed time in the covenant, that these are the rabbinical Zionist crew, have to sacrifice themselves. And of course they haven't. Instead, what we see is in the 20th century, which was signified as if you like, the maturing of this covenant,
yes,
they substituted others instead of themselves. And the figure that was interpreted by their most senior rabbi in sacrifice of themselves, which they used as a substitute, was the figure 6 million.
6 million?
6 million. They interpreted that from their prophecy that they had to sacrifice 6 million of their own in order to remain in honor with the covenant. Now, people think of the figure 6 million in World War II, of course, right?
Yep.
But in fact, they tried it in World War I first, and it didn't wash. They claimed that 6 million Jewish German soldiers had been killed in World War I, and they made big announcements in New York about it, and people just said it was just all propaganda and crap, so they decided not to push it any further. But the figure was very strongly pushed in after World War II to say that 6 million Jews had been murdered in the Holocaust.
Right.
One thing to put in there, Frank, is this. Vic, do you know what the word Holocaust means?
No, I have never looked into it, so I'm gonna.
It means a burnt sacrificial offering to a god, and
of animals.
Yeah.
What did Hitler do, allegedly, right? Burnt them all.
Well, the sacrifices to Baal Moloch were going on 2,000 years ago.
The company Bayer that created the. Yeah. Yeah. Only
Accomplish that.
Hmm?
What does it mean? Once they've accomplished that.
Well, two things. One, from the time of the Roman cult popes that were Venetian, that were burning people, like the Cathars, they were getting prophecy out of them when they were burning them.
Yes.
And secondly, when they burn them, it's such an excruciating way to die that the soul is then given up to Moloch. So it becomes part of the energy of Moloch.
And that would make Moloch happy now, wouldn't it?
Well, turns out not really.
Turns out not really.
Well, yeah, in the sense that, well, okay, I mean, the challenge for them is that their cosmology is extremely basic, yeah? For example, they recognize that there has been supernatural forces in existence for a long time, but it's never really occurred to them where those spiritual forces come from.
Right.
Yeah?
Yes.
So if you have a superhuman spirit, where did it come from? Was it made out of energy? Was it because of the collective belief? Was it because some alien had existed prior to the Sarmatians? We call them Samaritans.
Yes.
Also, we call them Venetians. We also call them Phoenicians. We also call them Carthaginians. We also call them a number of other things. But to these people, they didn't really care. That's just not their interest. Their interest was, how do we establish an argument of power? They weren't really into, anything deeper than that. Their cosmology has always been shallow, power. They're traders.
Right.
To them, it was all about argument, legalese, position, and control. It was never about completion, synergy. They're into prophecy, but again, it shows how shallow they are. They would rather be told something from a dying man or woman on a stake than spend 20 years studying history to come up with something themselves. Yeah?
Right. Yep.
So it's a real mindset of these people. And that's why they build their big houses and have parties and, take drugs, because really, to them, it's all the short path, Vic. It's not the long path, it's the short path. In all of this, it's Sansu, Sensei, a lot of stuff gets spoken about Chinese war philosophy, but I think one truth is, to know thy enemy is extremely important, and it's one of the big missing pieces in moving forward. And truth movement is not a full appreciation of walking in the shoes and understanding the mind of the enemy. And I think that's why, sadly, a lot of actions are done without full effect. Like the Jesuits, for example, people not understanding who the Jesuits are, or the Roman cult. People thinking that they've been in power since the time of Peter, when in reality they only took power across in the 11th century.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of things that are coming to fore now that become tools that we can use to physically address, tackle, outposition these people. I just mentioned one then, the Roman cult. When I described the takeover by the Lombardy pagan satanic families that used the Pontifex Maximus title and their history to kind of outposition the Franks and the Saxons, that gave life back to Rome to outposition in Constantinople. I call them the Roman cult. I don't call them the Roman Catholic Church, because if you say the Catholic Church is corrupt, maybe in a room you might get 3 people that agree, but you're probably also going to get 5 people that are going to be quite upset because they're Catholic or they know someone who's Catholic, and they don't feel it's fair to basically slander everyone because of a few priests. But if you say Roman cult, you're not talking about a Catholic. You're talking about a very small group of people who know exactly what they're doing. Back to what I was saying before about understanding what happens in the court, and the concept of how to establish standing immediately, clearly. There's been thousands of, well, not just thousands, but millions of words that have been produced on the internet about how to tackle, tax and other issues. But in many cases, it's about fluff, about misdirection. It's getting back to exactly what's going on. So when we were talking before, Vic, about and what Gerald was showing is when you look at the definitions that are in the legal dictionaries, they tell you that when you walk in, one of the legal maxims is one who does not establish their rights has none. In other words, if you don't establish standing in court, you have no standing.
Correct.
They tell us. And yet, people still think that if they put paperwork into a clerk, that is somehow to establish standing. It doesn't. You walk into the court, you must stand and say, Your Honour, I'm a living being. The flesh lives, the blood flows. And I ask humbly for remedy. The judge doesn't want to give you remedy. They'll run out, as we described. They'll re-establish their honour by coming back into court. The court will immediately transform into being a maritime court, from being a court of the Bar Society, and then he'll continue as if nothing happened. You have to re-establish again. Your Honour, wish to restate, I'm a living being, the blood flows, the flesh lives. The judge will freak out then because you've done it. And then you say, Your Honour, I humbly ask for cure and maintenance, not remedy, because it's a maritime court now. Yep. They'll really freak out the judge. Now, if it's a federal judge and he's really wanting to nail you and put you in prison, he'll run out again to re-establish honour. He'll come back in for the 3rd and final time. He can't do it anymore. And he'll say, Your Honour, that wish to establish that I'm a living being, the blood flows, the flesh lives, and we are sovereign, and nothing stands between myself and the divine. And because the judge for the 3rd time has now established his position as a priest under canon law, that's it. Game over.
Right.
But in that simple process, because they've fed so much garbage out to people, there is literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people that have gone to prison because they thought they were doing the remedy. And they wondered why in the hell it still railroaded through.
Yeah, well, if this is the basis of what they're doing, then it sure makes sense exactly what's going on and why people won't get the remedy. And I look at it like gambling. They'll let the odd person win, so they keep coming back for more. And other people get the sense that they can win. But this percentages are very small, but it keeps the business in the courts going anyhow, like it does in the gambling casinos.
That's right. It is a casino, and they're making money off it, as you know. They're making money every time someone goes to jail. Sell the bond, make their money.